Well, Razorback fans, it was a pretty interesting weekend for the most part when it came to the transfer portal and Razorback football and Sam Pittman and all that fun stuff. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Monday and had a wonderful weekend, as we will talk about some of the things that happened with the Razorback basketball team going down there, the North Little Rock, and also Braylen Russell. We'll talk about that specifically here in just a second. But I wanted to get into the overall vibes, the overall status, the updates, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to the transfer portal and the Razorback football team. Right now, where it stands, Arkansas, at the time of the recording of this podcast, have just 3 players that have officially committed and signed with the Razorbacks. You have a defensive back in Connie Walker. You have a wide receiver in Raylan Sharp. And you have an offensive lineman, Jaquan McCrory. That does it for right now. Those are your 3 players. Now, we'll talk about a little bit specifics from these players, but when it comes to addressing needs, I started to think about, I was like, well, defensive back, wide receiver, offensive tackle, yeah, those are really big needs. But you're really at the point that every need is a big need. I mean, every single thing is. So no matter what it is, it's going to be something that helps. But we'll start with the first one, which was Jaquan McCrory, which he was one that had already been recruited by Arkansas when he was coming out of high school. And there were some connections there. He's a transfer from Oregon. He did not play at all this season, but granted, Oregon's the number 1 team in the country, and it's really hard for a true freshman to just step out on the field and play for a team like Oregon. But to say he's a big old boy is a understatement, because he is literally 6'8", 375 pounds. He is a monster, and he's going to be sitting in there at the offensive tackle position, at least he should, out of Pinson, Alabama. He was a 4-star player coming out of high school. He's the number 95 player overall in the country coming out of high school. But in the transfer portal rankings, he is the number 8 offensive tackle and the number 98 overall player, according to 24/7 Sports. So addressing a big need there. You still need a lot more, but getting somebody who you wanted before and getting somebody who obviously you have the connections with and not exactly has a lot of playing time, but potentially could be a guy that could really help you out. The next one was Connie Walker. I believe that's how you say his name. But he is a defensive back, a cornerback specifically, who is a transfer from Oklahoma. He was originally from Douglasville, Georgia. He was 6'2", 206 pounds. Doesn't even have, according to 24/7 Sports, doesn't even really have a ranking when it comes to the transfer portal side of things. But he originally played at Louisville, then he went to Oklahoma, and now he's coming to Arkansas and trying to help out. So you have him, and a few stats here and there, but nothing too significant. Did get plenty of playing time and did play for the majority of the games that Oklahoma had this season. So at least a contributor from somebody from another SEC school. And finally, you have Raylan Sharp, who is the latest addition, a wide receiver who transfers in from Fresno. He is only 5'9", 165, so he's a little bit on the shorter side when it comes to the stature, but he's originally from Allen, Texas. He is the number 50 wide receiver in the transfer portal class and the number 296th player overall, according to 24/7 Sports. Had a nice little season, didn't have anything extraordinary as far as yardage and everything goes, but did have over 500 yards. He was also a player that used to play at Missouri State. So if you're looking for any sort of connection there for Bobby Petrino and the offense and all of that, then there's where it comes into play. You're able to have a guy that has the familiarity and the connections and all of that. And that's it. Those are your 3 players at this point in time out of the transfer portal. I expect there to be more. There will be. I would even say that I expect them to have some sort of, I won't call it a major pop, but definitely will have a couple of guys I believe you'll be surprised by. But that's truly it right now. Now, I want to be clear, folks. I'm not downplaying these particular players, these individuals, because let's be honest, they're guys that could really help out the team, and they are addressing needs. And who knows? Maybe they could be really good. Maybe they could be really solid contributors and everything. But it's really hard to believe, and just given the direction of where things are going right now, and assuming that what Sam Pittman said last week is 100% true, that they have the money, they're able to do the things with the NIL and all that, there still needs to be a lot more to this transfer portal class. Now, again, I am not poo-pooing on these people or on these players or anything. And I'm not even trying to be negative. I'm just being honest by what Sam Pittman said. You lost a lot of talent into the transfer portal this year. In fact, you could make the argument that this year, I don't even know if it is an argument. This year was the biggest loss you had into the transfer portal since the transfer portal has been a thing. You've lost some players before, but even last year when you lost KJ Jefferson and you lost Rocket Sanders, those guys, you could just tell it was time to move on. They didn't really play much. This overall wasn't really a big thing. And you knew that with the Bobby Petrino offense, that KJ Jefferson was not going to be a player that fit it. So even those players that were really good, when they moved on, you're kind of like, well, you hate to see it. Chris Paul was without a question the biggest one from last year. But you at least felt comfortable and confident that you could be able to find some people to adhere to the issues there and to step up, which I think you did. I think Taylon Green did a fine job, and I think very comparable to KJ Jefferson. I think Jaquinton Jackson, I know he's hurt a lot, but I still think he was just as good, if not better, than Rocket Sanders. And, Chris Paul, great player. I mean, and, I'm not trying to say you replaced him, but you definitely did a pretty solid job at the linebacker spot a year ago. But now it's becoming such a overwhelming thing of trying to find high-quality players where you're getting stretched pretty thin. And this is where you're going to have to come into play of moneyballing this type of team, which, okay, in theory it might work. In theory it might sound good, but is this truly how you're going to be able to improve upon your roster? Sam Pittman, and they have to understand the urgency here. They have to understand what's at stake. And I really hope they do, because if they don't understand it, that means they don't care. You have to win right now. Right now. You have to win. I felt like before the year started, I said this on this podcast, and I'll say it again. I felt like 6-6 was not going to be good enough for Sam Pittman to keep his job. Well, Arkansas went 6-6. So you know how I feel. But since you're keeping them, you better retain talent, which you didn't do at all. You did not retain any of the high major talent that you were supposed to, or that you should have. And so now you're trying to go into the portal and trying to Band-Aid up this team and put it together to try to make it work and to try to make it somewhat feasible and somewhat decent. But the problem is that it's almost overwhelming, it seems like. And then you throw in the fact that next year's schedule is going to be even more difficult. So what exactly are you... I just can't help... I'm sorry. I cannot help but feel like Arkansas is so far behind the 8 ball on everything right now that every other team, a lot of these other teams, are 2 steps ahead of Arkansas, and Arkansas is having to constantly play catch-up. They're constantly surprised by things. They're surprised by certain players leaving. They're surprised by how much they're winning. They're surprised by all of this. And I think they're getting taken advantage of is what the vibe is. Ole Miss is one of the biggest proponents of this. This is wild. Ole Miss is basically becoming or I should say Arkansas is becoming the farm system for Ole Miss. You mentioned Chris Paul last year. Well, guess what? Patrick Kudus, Luke Haas, and Jalen Braxton, arguably 3 of your best transfers. I don't know if it's an argument. They were the top 3 of the top 4, at least, transfers that you had going to this transfer portal, all going to Ole Miss. Brad Spence is going to Texas, which you hate to see. But there's a pipeline now. There's become a connection. Whatever it is, there's a connection there from Arkansas to Ole Miss, and I haven't made the joke, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if like something like this was a little bit, maybe not to the level of it, but is there a mole inside of the Razorback athletic department inside the football program that's getting these players to Ole Miss instead of staying in Arkansas? I still don't like the way that it was handled with Kudus, with him telling Sam Pittman that he's going to be a hog and then not, and then taking advantage of the red shirt thing. I'm not a fan of that per se. But again, it's madness and it's chaos. There's no such thing as loyalty. And then people just come back and be like, oh, coaches can leave whenever they want. Yeah, but at least with coaches, there's still some sort of consequence to that, whether you think it's nice or not. If a coach leaves, there's still buyouts. There's still money that is owed. Breaches of contract. Like there's those things. Players leave. There's nothing to it. So it's just hard for me to really feel good about it all right now. Still, I keep saying that, but it is. If you truly feel like you got a lot of money, and if you truly feel like you got a good handle on the situation, a good grasp on the situation, you probably need to show it a little bit in the transfer portal. You probably need to do that just a little bit instead of dealing with this nonsense. Instead of making it look like you're just, again, trying to find diamonds in the rough, and or projects or ones that you're going to take some work and then just hoping it's all going to be just as good, if not better. You got to find a way to do something. Got to find a way, and it's got to start now. I'm going to bring this up. We're going to talk about it on the other side. This Braylen Russell situation, folks, it's really annoying and really bad. Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast on the other side of the break. All right, folks, I'm here to tell you about FanDuel, of course, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers, all of you that jump into the FanDuel side of things, you can bet just $5. And when you bet $5, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on in the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I'm really frustrated by this situation, folks, and I know a lot of you are. This Braylen Russell thing, the Razorback running back. It is a very sad situation. It is a very sad thing. Because, for those of you who may not know, Braylen Russell entered into the transfer portal again. No, I know. He entered in, you're saying, hey, well, yeah, duh, he entered into the portal last week, but he got out of it. He's back at Arkansas. No, he's not, because he entered into the portal again. He did that at 5:30 yesterday afternoon. 5 days after. 5 days after he removed himself on the same day. So it was just, I talked about it on the podcast. Just a quick recap. When he entered into the transfer portal last week, it was a shock to many, because the original report from Trey Biddy of Hog Sports said that Braylen Russell was entering into the transfer portal. Mason Choate of Hog Beat contacted Braylen Russell, says, hey, are you going into the portal? He said, no, I'm not going into the portal. It's like, okay, so can I quote you on that and confirm that you do not intend to enter into the portal? He said, yes. Well, Mason ran with the story, as anybody would. And then Braylen Russell entered into the transfer portal anyways. So it was like, wow. Caused a huge stir, huge problem, huge issues, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then, later that afternoon, he's out of the transfer portal. He's back at Arkansas. And everyone's like, okay, he's deciding to come back. Great. I mean, for those you didn't know, he ran 47 times, had 304 yards, 6.5 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. All right. And he even confirmed it with a post originally when he entered into the portal on Instagram. And then he came out of it. Then he put up a highlight video yesterday at 5:30. Just says, "Thank you, Arkansas. It's time to do what's best for me and my family. Number 0 out." So he entered back into the portal. Okay, so folks, I'm going to be very careful about this, and I'm going to be very cautious when I say these things because so many people can take it as me coming down on an 18, 19-year-old kid or being like, but I'm not going to play that game. I'm sorry. I'm not going to, okay? I don't know who's involved with all the decision makings that Braylen Russell is involved in. I don't know, but whatever advising that he's getting, whoever's guiding him is doing a poor job of it. They're just doing a poor job of it, man. I feel for Braylen. I think he's a good kid from all intents and purposes. I understand he's also 19 years old. He's still a teenager. But he's had a lot of history of going back and forth on things to where this, unfortunately, is not too surprising that this was the behavior that happened. I mean, he was the guy who committed to Arkansas, then decommitted to Arkansas, then committed to Tennessee, then decommitted to Tennessee, then signed with Arkansas, then he entered in the portal, then he entered, so there's just been a lot of inconsistencies here. And I hate that. I hate that it's become this. And I hate the transfer portal when it comes to this type of stuff. Here is my solution to something like this. If you go into the transfer portal, you're in the transfer portal. You can do whatever you want. You can go to another school, or you can withdraw your name. However, once you withdraw your name, you cannot enter into the transfer portal again for a year. To me, that would be a fair thing to keep stuff like this happening. There's got to be a way of having some sort of consequence to these said decisions. I'm sorry if I feel like there should be a higher expectation and a higher standard for these decisions that are made. I understand that there's a lot going on. I understand that there's a lot that we don't know as media and that we don't know as fans that are going inside the locker room, whether it's dealing with coaches, whether it's dealing with other teammates, whether it's dealing with, the school itself, whether it's dealing with mental health, whatever it is. I understand that. I do. And I appreciate it. But this type of thing just should never be something that's casually accepted. It should never be something that's just, oh, well, that's the way it goes. There needs to be some sort of way of and an expectation and a way of handling things professionally, because that's what it's becoming. And we all say that it's professional sports. You got to handle things professionally. And this was something that was not handled professionally in the slightest. And if I'm a coach out there that's looking at getting a running back or getting Braylen Russell, who's a highly talented running back, whether it's right or wrong, I am taking something like this into consideration of being like, well, how do I know when I bring this kid in that he's going to stay here, that he's going to stay committed, that he's going to be all in? Because he, again, has a history of this, a flip-flopping, going back and forth. And I just hate it for him. And I hate it for the system. And I hate it for what's all going on. It's just a very obvious and terrible black eye on what is this whole process that we call the transfer portal. It's not what it's intended to be. So I don't know. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the way it was handled when he was telling one reporter that he was not going into the portal and the other one he is. I have a problem with that. I've had a problem with all of this. And I don't think anybody cares, and I don't think it'll matter in the end. But still, it's just very disappointing. I think he's a phenomenal running back. And I appreciate the fact that he's, of course, an in-state kid, a kid from Arkansas, for sure. But it just, given what I've seen a lot on posts on social media from people who have represented him and others, it just seems like it's all about the bag. It's all about getting the money, which is okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But you playing these games and hopping all over the place, that just shows that there's a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of immaturity and a lot of problems that's going to continue to be caused and continue to be raised as time goes on. So anyways, unfortunate situation, but wish him nothing but the best of luck. Whatever he ends up doing, hopefully he has nothing but the best of luck. But I am so glad that this saga is going to be over so we don't have to worry about going back and forth all over the place because it was definitely way too dramatic for my tasting. We'll get a Razorback basketball. Nice little win over the weekend. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Folks, it's that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, of course, is the SMU Mustangs battling against Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Razorback basketball, how about that? Getting a nice little win down there in North Little Rock at Simmons Bank Arena. Over UCA, final score of 82-57. The Razorbacks led big in this game and never really looked back. In fact, Arkansas was up by 31 points with less than 5 minutes to go. Just absolute destruction, which I know UCA is not a great team. They were missing some of their players due to injuries. But Arkansas, honestly, folks, Arkansas probably played their best first half of basketball I've seen them. It was nice to see that for a change. It's nice to see them just come out and be the dominant force, and had a lot of players that played really well. 6 players in double figures in this one. We'll start with Boogie Fland. Led the way at 16 points, 7-11 from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point land. Had 9 assists and 1 turnover. Jiminy. And 5 steals. I mean, this guy's incredible. Arkansas only had 5 steals as a team. He had all 5. So let me read that stat line again. 16 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 steals, 1 turnover. Not too shabby for Boogie Fland, who's just going to be a bona fide dude and a bona fide draft pick here very soon. So good game for him. You also saw Karter Knox came off the bench. I really like this. He was second with 14 points on this. He 5 of 8 from the field, 14 points, had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, did have 2 turnovers, but it was nice to see him in 22 minutes of action just get out there as a true freshman and mix it up a little bit. DJ Wagner was another player that I should have brought him up second, but he had 13 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 4 from three-point land, so he's shooting the 3 really well. 6 assists also for him, 1 rebound. Did have 3 turnovers, so, obviously want to clean that up a little bit. But DJ Wagner in 31 minutes, I'm really starting to like him shooting the ball, especially offensively. I really like what he was able to do. Jonas Adu may have been the best story of the day because, you're just constantly trying to get him back into the swing of things, back healthy, back into the mix as much as possible because you really need his physicality and he makes a difference. But he didn't miss a shot. He went 6 of 6 from the field, 13 points for him. Had 4 rebounds as well as 2 blocked shots. So a nice little game for him in 24 minutes as he's slowly but surely getting back. Shout out to Trevin Brazile again, dude. Trevin Brazile is starting to be that dude. He's really starting to come into his own. He had 11 points, 4-6 from the field, but had 7 rebounds, 5 block shots, 7 rebounds, 5 block shots, and an assist. He also had 3 turnovers, but 21 minutes of play. Dude out there is just so active, and he's all over the place. So you love to see that. And also, of course, Nelly Davis. He has a pretty typical Nelly Davis game. 4 of 7 from the field, 11 points, 3 of 6 from 3. Had a rebound, had an assist. Not too much else there, but nice little defensive prowess there. But still, Arkansas just gets the job done. Slowly but surely getting there, still having some really good games out of guys, still want to demand more from some of these guys. But it's just a matter of building and getting ready for SEC play. Arkansas is going to be facing the number 1 team in the country, Tennessee Volunteers, on the road in their very first SEC game, which will be here before we know it. But they just got a couple more games before they get to that point. When it comes to getting healthy, you better get everybody healthy because like Big Z came in a little bit in this game, but did not play much. Still nursing that injury that he's had with his ankle, trying to make sure he's healthy and ready to go. Notice who I didn't even mention was a guy by the name of Thiero. Yeah, I remember him. He was really good. He didn't play. He's still dealing with some illness and all that. So your best player, at least the guy who's been your best players this season, didn't even play in this game. So still, you're having to find ways. You're having to find ways to get better, to get back at it. Oh, geez, since I keep forgetting players. Billy Richmond, shout out to him. 4 points, 5 rebounds as well. So nice to see him in the mix. Yeah, just like to see the growth. I like to see it. They got to get everybody healthy, though, because when this team is healthy, if they can get Jonas Adu healthy, and when you got Duthiero back and he's 100%, it seems like it could be a really, really fun type of team and type of basketball to watch. We'll have to wait and see, though. They're getting closer. But they're definitely getting the job done. Nice little win down there in Little Rock, North Little Rock, against the UCA Bears. Appreciate everybody listening in and watching in to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you then.